Good evening. This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. And we are here with, as you know, if you were watching the Rudy Giuliani show, we had begun our interview with Ali Reza, and we were talking about it's almost impossible to emphasize it enough, the centrality of getting rid of the regime of terror so that you can solve the problem in the Middle East. I mean, if you were to come up with the perfect solution and everybody agreed and the Palestinians agreed and everyone agreed, as soon as it was implemented, the Ayatollah and his henchmen and criminals would try to figure out how to undermine it.
That's what they have been doing.
Because they're dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. It's central to their mission, right? Don't they say that every day?
Well, you know, there are Friday prayers in Iran that the Ayatollahs have had for over 40 years. And there are 3 chants that are done from the microphone by the officials. Death to the United States, death to Israel, and death to the MEK, which is the most organized, largest Iranian opposition movement inside the country that has been fighting the Ayatollahs to overthrow them. So it tells you that, you know, this regime is built on destroying others, is built on destruction. They have no constructive message whatsoever. They haven't had it for over 40 years. And they thrive on crisis and export of terrorism, development of nuclear weapons, supporting all these proxies. That's where they spend the money on. Mm-hmm. You know, the regime spent $100 billion in Syria trying to keep Assad in power.
Right.
They spent billions of dollars with Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and also specifically on Hezbollah in Lebanon. And they, you know, Hassan Nasrallah was basically carrying out the mission for the Ayatollahs in Iran. And now they lost all of that. And also they're facing their own population. The people have rejected the regime, especially since 2018. There have been 9 rounds of major uprisings in Iran, people chanting death to the Khamenei, death to dictatorship, and they want freedom. They want democracy. There is an organized resistance inside the country that have been fighting the regime. And that organized resistance is gaining momentum despite all the killings, despite all the arrests, despite all the demonization and the attacks, both physically inside Iran, outside Iran, but also the propaganda they do against this movement. That movement has grown over the years.
So if we take a look at the map there, which people can see, I think if we put it up there, of Iran, the green part, that's a pretty big country, right? 90 million people.
Absolutely.
And pretty well distributed throughout the country, right?
Yes.
So there was a period of time between roughly 17, 18, and 20 when there was just about a protest a day. And every single city, including small cities, just about, right?
Well, since 2018, at least, there have been several rounds of uprisings in all 31 provinces, over 280 cities. And the interesting thing, as you mentioned, Mayor, is that the protests this time in the past 6-7 years didn't start from the capital, didn't start by the intellectuals, which used to be the case. Rather, it started from, you know, the poor, the deprived, the smaller towns and cities. These used to be the bedrock of support for the Ayatollahs. Mm-hmm. And that's a clear indication that the regime has lost it all. There's nobody really in Iran except those who are feeding off the regime, you know, the forces who are being paid by the regime, their own revolutionary guards, their own repressive forces. Everybody else is really pretty much against the regime.
How much of the regime and its control is centered in Tehran?
Well, of course, Tehran is the capital. You know, all of the major changes have happened over the years in Tehran. That's where the focus is, trying to prevent the uprisings and everything. But what has happened now is that the regime is now unable to control the
Well, I was
situation
wondering,
because they cannot put all the focus in Tehran.
I look at the map again, and I see it's a very big country, right? So there's Tehran, right there. Now
Right.
you go all the way down south, or south east, right? That's pretty far away.
Right.
How much control do they have of the outer regions?
Well, they did a lot of efforts trying to gain control, especially after the uprising. They decentralized the Revolutionary Guards. They created the headquarters for the Revolutionary Guards in every single province, in all 31 provinces of Iran, with the hope of giving them the authority to be able to control and suppress the population. But they were not successful at all. And that's a new phenomenon that started like 7-8 years ago, but that hasn't really helped them. Anything they do actually backfires. The only solution that Tehran has found is to kill more people. Just in the past year, in 2024, there have been 1,000 execution of prisoners in Iran. 1,000.
Since when?
Since the beginning of 2024 until the end of 2024. In 1 year.
Last year.
Yeah, just this past year.
1,000 executions.
Yes, and this is much higher than all the previous years. What does it tell you?
I would have thought 2024 was a little quieter than way back in 2018, 2019.
Exactly.
2020.
Exactly. But that shows that they need to rely more on the executions. They want to send a message to the population that, whatever you do, we're going to come back and kill you. They sentenced to death at least a dozen people who they had arrested during the uprisings, who were associated with the main organized opposition, the Mujahid Khalq or the MEK, sentenced them to death. And just 2 weeks ago, two of them their death sentence was reconfirmed by the Supreme Court, moved them from one prison to the other prison where they were executing. There was major backlash internationally, but also inside Iran. Human rights organizations spoke up, members of Congress spoke up. This is a desperate regime that relies on killing inside Iran, but also the proxies outside of Iran.
Because externally, there's no question, and a lot of people have described it different ways. They had put together a pretty intricate defense system made up of proxies. And for a while, a couple of years ago, people were saying how brilliant it was. I mean, they had everybody fighting for them. They didn't have to. They had. If you look at the map of the Middle East, all the way down in Yemen, all the way down here, they have the Houthis, right?
Right. Exactly.
And then they had they control a certain portion of Iraq. They don't. They used to control a lot of Iraq.
Right.
And
they control the government. The Shia militias there were dominating.
So how much control do you think in Iraq? About half?
Well, a lot of that control has gone away because
we have forces there. The Kurds have successfully fought them off.
Yes, and also in Lebanon, the biggest force that was fighting for the Ayatollahs was Hezbollah, entirely funded, trained, and maintained by the Iran regime. And then in Syria, Assad was acting on behalf of Tehran.
Think about it. They have the Houthis down here. They had a good portion of Iraq, right? They had a good portion of Syria, right?
Right.
They had Lebanon with Hezbollah, which was their main group, the group they trusted the most
by far.
And they would say during the Hamas war, they were saying, "Oh, Hezbollah is much tougher." And then, of course, they have the pathetic, because I think they think they're pathetic, the pathetic Hamas. And so, since the October 7 attack, Hamas has been virtually destroyed. Doesn't mean it can't be rebuilt, but right now, you go to war, Hamas is not going to help you. Hezbollah, I think, was the big surprise. And I don't know their strategy of continually bombing northern Israel. And somehow it wasn't doing any real damage except displacing the people. And then Israel, I guess Bibi made the decision, I got to fight this thing, all at once and just get it over with. But in a very short period of time, they destroyed Hezbollah. They retreated. Did they go back to Iran, or where are they? The ones that are alive, where are they? They're not fighting. Did they go to Iran or?
Well, Mayor, even those in Iran, they cannot keep
Because they would have been in
anywhere.
here. They would have been in here.
Yes, and the reason that some people were surprised is that the Iranian regime has managed to build this perception that they're invincible, that they're 10 feet tall,
That's
they have all
gone.
the resources and everything, and that's the benefit. Of course, that's why they were spending the money and resources, and now the world has seen, especially since last year, that the Ayatollahs are so weak, are so vulnerable. They can't keep their closest allies with all the money they spent. And that's why, who could think that Assad in 11 days, the whole thing could collapse? They had fought for about 3-4 years to keep Assad in power and get back Aleppo. And Aleppo fell almost overnight, which is the largest, city in Syria, the most populated city in Syria.
So, I mean, if you look at the position of Syria and Iraq, they kind of, they're like a buffer. And they're not much of a buffer anymore. And then when they did the 2 attacks on Israel, Israel responded by going deep into Iran to exactly where one of the nuclear facilities is, to show they can reach it and hit it. And that's before they got the major bunker busting bombs that Biden wouldn't give them, which they got 2 weeks ago. So I don't know what their next move is going to be. To try to negotiate and buy time? Are they capable of that?
Well, you mentioned use a
I hope
nice
they don't
word.
fool us.
You said that those countries like Lebanon and Syria were buffer. Actually, the regime itself described, for instance, Syria, they described as a strategic depth to the Iran regime, giving them basically the leverage. And Khamenei always argued that if we don't fight in Syria, we'll have to fight back in Iran, meaning the Iranian population. All of that is now gone. Now, what the regime is trying to do, they want to make up for all the losses. And they want to, that's why they're dashing towards building the nuclear bomb. The very few elements that is really left for them is to rush to get to the bomb. And we just, last week we had a press conference in Washington, and we exposed yet another 2 sites that were until now known as being like the missile sites, but in fact, that's where they're building nuclear warheads there. We showed that
where is that?
That's in the central part of Iran, in Semnan and Shahrud. If you enlarge the map, right below Tehran and towards the east of Tehran, about 300, about close to 200 miles
About
east
here?
of Tehran. Yes, around that. Yeah, to the right, a little bit right to the right. Yes. And then the next one is about the same distance to the right, also to the east. Yes, further up. Right.
Further up.
Right. So that's Semnan and Shahrud, and we showed that that's where the focus of the main organization that is built to develop nuclear weapons is called SEPAND, SPND. We first exposed this organization in 2011. And later, the nuclear watchdog of the UN, IAEA, confirmed that, and they included our information in their November 2011 report. And then 3 years later, the State Department, the Treasury Department designated as SEPAND. And now our information shows that SEPAND has created a large-scale organization and personnel in these 2 sites, especially in Shahrud. Now, they're covering all of their program under a space program that they're putting satellite into orbit. But in fact, all of that is a cover to develop nuclear warheads.
Well, the original one was it was going to be the peaceful use of nuclear power, which was a little stupid for the country with the most oil in the world.
They're burning gas.
Just what they need is nuclear power.
Right.
The last country that needs nuclear power would be Iran.
Yes. Iran sits on the 2nd largest oil and gas reserves combined in the world. Right. And they can't even develop that. And they're spending they spend $2 trillion on their nuclear weapons program. Think about it. $2 trillion. For Iran, it's a lot. The Iran-Iraq war that lasted 8 years cost Iran $1 trillion. Yet the nuclear program that has no benefit whatsoever except keeping the mullahs in power, which is to the detriment of the people of Iran, has cost the people of Iran $2 trillion.
So today or yesterday, the Treasury Department imposed new sanctions. And these are sanctions on international network accused of shipping Iranian oil to China. So a lot of the salvation for Iran has been being able to substitute a lot of what was cut off with doing business with China. The purpose of these sanctions is to do what was done in 18 and 19 and 20, which is as best we can cut off those transactions and to penalize any countries that assist in that.
Right.
And last time we did that, they were driven to utter poverty. And you remember, I mean, you remember better than I do, the demonstrations with the people selling parts of their body. And I think that you thought, and I think the administration thought, that we were looking at who knew when, but we were looking back in 18 and 19, even maybe even to 20, at an a regime that was really. And then since Biden came in, he loosened up the sanctions, much more dramatically than people think, pumped at least 100 billion in. And as of a short while ago, they were a pretty rich country. But I think the money they must have lost with their entire ring of fire going down, because a lot of it were investments in those proxies, right?
Absolutely. Let me give you some figures. That's an important point you raised, Mayor. You know, when the sanctions were imposed on the Iran regime and they brought down the oil export back to about 300,000 barrels a day in January 2020. Okay. Now, within the past 40 years, that oil export went up to 1.7, 1.8, and sometimes 2 million barrels a day, almost 6 times more oil export. Now, you would assume that all of the money that goes there is going to help the economy. That was just a justification.
Right.
The more money you give them, the economy is going to prosper. Well, guess what? The country, the people got poorer actually under the past 40 years, because what happened, the money never ended up in the hands of the people. It further empowered the Revolutionary Guards. It gave more money to their proxies. This whole system is corrupt. And look at the value of the currency. I just looked it up before I came here. In January 2020, the value of currency for $1 was 24,000 tumans. So you give $1, you get 24,000 tumans. Now, today, as we speak, to right now, you have to give 86,000. Okay. So the value of currency has gotten down and the people have gotten poorer. The economy has gotten worse while they had more money. So where did the money go? It goes exactly to the proxies, to Hezbollah, to all of their operations, to their nuclear weapons program, and people get poorer. So you don't want to create that kind of a situation that you empower the Revolutionary Guards by lifting the sanctions. And that's why we call on, the whole world, the international community, to bring back all the sanctions, UN Security Council Resolution 2231, that, putting back the sanctions, the snapback, what they call, and hold the regime accountable for their terrorism. Don't give them money. Don't give them resources. Don't give them legitimacy. That will create a space for the people of Iran to fight a weaker Revolutionary Guards, a more demoralized Revolutionary Guards, and they because the momentum is already there. You just want to create more space. You want to recognize the legitimacy of the people confronting the Revolutionary Guards. You want to legitimize the confrontation of the resistance units on the ground who are fighting the Revolutionary Guards. That would eventually lead to what happened in Syria, collapse of the system. You need the forces on the ground to proceed further and bring down the Ayatollahs. And that's what we need to see from the out. All you need to do is just cut off the resources, recognize the legitimacy of the resistance inside the country.
Are we beyond the ability of the regime to blame the tremendous economic problems that they have and the ones that are going to happen as a result of the increase. The typical dictator, communist, Nazi, fascist would blame it on the enemy and say, oh, you're really poor because of what America and Europe is doing to you. It seems to me with the riots they had last time, you got past that, because when you look at the demonstrations were not against the United States. They were not against England. They were against the Ayatollah. So it seems to me the population has been educated beyond that. I hope that's not wishful thinking.
Well, no, that's actually facts on the ground, because the height of the sanctions on the Iranian regime, where it started in 2018, 2019 was the height of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a worry. Whenever we put sanctions on, there's always a worry they'll get blamed on us, and a dictatorial regime will use that to bolster themselves.
Actually, it was exactly the opposite, because in the height of the sanctions, people were chanting slogan. One of the most popular slogans all over Iran, not just in one area, was that they were chanting, the enemy is right here, meaning in those Iranian cities. Yeah. They lie when they say it's America. So they were very specific that they're not buying the propaganda of the Iranian regime. They are holding the regime responsible for all of the misery that the people have.
Well, that's a big step to overthrow.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. We have a lot of experience now with how an overthrow happens. I often think when it starts getting to food, living, being able to live beyond just political theory. I mean, freedom is important for a certain number of people, but being fed and being able to live is important to everybody. And these demonstrations, some of them were about freedom, like when the young woman who was killed, but a lot of these were bus drivers and teachers and workers who were protesting against economic conditions.
Yes.
And quite correctly blaming it on the regime. Right. Some of them even quite knowledgeable that the money is being spent on terrorism and not on them.
Right. Well, this is exactly the case, Mayor, because the people, they know in every small town and city, they know the big thieves are the commanders of Revolutionary Guards in that city, because they are controlling Revolutionary Guards control about 2/3 of the entire economy. Every single major development project in the country is controlled by the Revolutionary Guards. They are like the mafia gangs that they control everything. So the people see it's not just a regular corruption. It's a very systematic corruption from top to the bottom that is basically, gives the resource of money to Revolutionary Guards, their commanders, the people associated with the office of the Supreme Leader. Khamenei is for sure the most wealthy person in the world. Just one of the institutions that he controls entirely is actually having at least $100 billion of assets. And there are dozens of these institutions that are controlled by them. So people, they don't have to read books. They know in every small town and city that the reason they're poor, the reason the economy is going down, the reason they're not, they don't have food on the table, that they're hungry. Iran, which is a very rich country, but 80% of the people live below the poverty line in a country like Iran. Why? 80%. This is according to a lot of the statistics put out by the Iranian regime. People have to work 3 or 4 jobs. Still, a lot of people haven't had meat in any form or shape for months.
How many? So let's look at the ideology for a minute. How much of the population buys into the religious bastardization that the Ayatollah has created there? It's almost as if it's a combination of a political and religion. It's a political ideology, but it's surrounded with religion. So how many people buy into that?
Well, it used to be a lot, but right now there's hardly anyone you can actually find that way, except the people who are in the inner circle.
Even buy into it.
Yeah, the inner. Actually, interestingly, a lot of the clerics.
A lot of people say that the
clerics who used to be until very recently in the inner circle of the Khamenei, they're dismissing it. No one really buys it. They know that over over 90% of, actually 99% of the Iranian population are Muslims. But the vast majority of the people are vehemently opposed to the regime that is actually misusing religion. They're saying, you guys have nothing to do with God or a religion or Islam. This is just a cover that they're using to plunder the nation, to kill people under the name of God, to maintain control, to fund their proxies to do the fighting for them. All of that is now known to the population.
Right.
That's why there is nothing in the world that can actually save the mullahs from the overthrow. All of the games that they have played before is now exposed.
What happens to the Revolutionary Guard? Do they stay with them, or do they at some point peel off? And in the further regions of Iran, is there the same loyalty of the Revolutionary Guard to the regime?
Well, the Revolutionary Guard is the pillar that actually keeps the regime in power.
I would think so.
In
right?
every uprisings, it was the Revolutionary Guards or forces associated with them that maintained the regime in power. So the top commanders of Revolutionary Guards are so loyal to the regime, both because they're engulfed, they're involved in the economic interests, but also their fate is tied to the survival of this regime. Right. However, when it comes to the rank and file, the lower rankings, they're just waiting, looking at the situation. That's why it's so important to tilt the balance of power. You have to fight. You have to show the whole population. You have to show the world. You have to show even to the top commanders of Revolutionary Guards that their days are numbered.
Right.
And that's where we're getting, because, up until now, they were so boasting about Hezbollah. Look how powerful we
that
are.
Has
that
to
we
have been,
have, thousands of miles away, hundreds of miles away, we have Hezbollah. We have the Houthis who are confronting the American forces. Look at the situation in Syria. All of that is now gone.
Now, do you think that? So the president said something in the remarks with Bibi that I have to pull out, and I hope I understand what it meant. He did talk twice about the idea that he wants to see if he's going to. He feels very bad having to put the maximum sanctions on them, because I think he knows people are going to starve to death doing that. And when he says Mac, you should understand that neither Obama or Biden really used much of any sanctions. Even the sanctions that were in place were not enforced. When the Trump people first went into the Treasury Department in 2017, these sanctions hadn't been enforced for 3-4 years. And within 3 or 4 months, before Trump got a chance to develop even more onerous sanctions, Iran was suffering. And I think they began suffering the day Trump came into office. And now we have this other major sanction, which is trying to cut off how they've been sort of supporting themselves on China. This is an attempt. I'm pretty sure you can't cut it all off. But if you can cut off 60 or 70% of what they're getting from China, and you put the other sanctions in effect, he's going to have them starving. I mean, they're going to be starving quickly. Now, why? Well, I shouldn't ask you this question. I hope that the comment that we want to talk to them was tactical and not real. I don't see the point in talking to them. I do not understand how you could have any realistic hope that you're going to get anything out of these people other than lying to you, because they are zealots who are, no matter what they say to you, when we're finished, they're still going to want to destroy Israel. They're still going to want to kill the Jews, and they're still going to want to eliminate America, no matter what they say.
Well, Mayor,
that's in there. That's who. Unfortunately, that's who they are. It's like saying we would reform the top Nazis. Like we're going to reform Goering, and we're going to reform Hitler, and we're going to reform. No, sorry. Maybe the German people, maybe the ones who went along with it, maybe even some who did things wrong, but they weren't. They did it to survive. Yeah, you can reform them, but you're not going to reform these top people.
Right. Well, the most important element, Mayor, is the distinction between the people of Iran and the Iranian regime.
Right.
So every time we're talking about Iran as a nation. Of course, Iran as a nation, the people have rejected this regime.
Yeah, it's like
They're
China.
opposed to it. They, the so-called elections, the presidential elections, the parliament election, is widely boycotted. People have entirely lost hope.
What about the last
in the
one?
ballot box? The very last one was disaster, absolute disaster. Even the regime's official numbers were much lower than anything they had announced before.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
So clearly
they couldn't even
showing
fake it.
that, and even they couldn't get enough people before the cameras in some certain stations to show the outside world. So
And now the new prime minister, he's another reformer.
the new president Pezeshkian, actually.
What did he just?
Well, under Pezeshkian, you had more executions than the previous one. So he's really a stooge in the hands of the clerics.
He kills more people.
The so-called reformers are the ones who are, have been fully associated with the supreme leader. Otherwise, they wouldn't be even allowed to stand as candidates. So the important thing is that there is a history over the past 40 years that this regime has tried to get other nations, whether the United States or Europe and others, to sit down and negotiate with them. At the end of the day, their purpose is not to change their behavior. Their purpose is to gain concessions, and play with the rest of the world. And they took hostages and they got money for it. So they got the whole world involved into this hostage for concessions business.
Right.
Now is the time to end all of that, because the whole thing has changed since last year, as you said, since October 7, 2023. Look at the whole situation in the region, but also before that, it started with the uprisings in Iran. Now is a chance for the rest of the world to end the terrorism of the Iran regime once and for all, because the people of Iran want it. There's no need for boots on the ground or appropriating money, none of that. But the policy has to be focused on the people of Iran. I like to see that any leader around the world, whether it's Europe or the United States, when they talk about Iran, they talk about the people of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about those who standing up against the clerics, who standing up to their terror and mayhem and the killings.
Yes.
Iran must be recognized by its people, but most important, by the organized resistance, those who have been fighting to bring about change.
Well, tell us a little about that before we finish. So I also don't think most people are aware of the fact, because this is deliberately hidden from them. The amount of anti-resistance propaganda and brainwashing that goes on in this country, the only thing more than that is the Chinese infiltration. I mean, it's amazing. Until I started getting involved 13 years ago, I would not have believed it.
The regime has very sophisticated mayor.
And they convince people who are easy to convince because they're very left wing or they're very anti-American, but they convince some reasonable people too. And it is deep in the State Department. It's deeply embedded in the State Department, which means a lot of things are deeply embedded in the State Department. I would like to have seen the same thing happen to the State Department that happened to the CIA, where they offered everybody a buyout. Because my concept when I wanted to be Secretary of State was I was going to get rid of all of them. And the ones that I couldn't get rid of, I was going to build a big facility in Antarctica, and I was going to send them there for research. And I was going to have, I would just, however, have remote meetings with them. We'd have a big Zoom link. And I'd make sure they were warm. I'd make sure they had food. I'd make sure they had they could read all the Marxist literature they wanted and make themselves happy. But we weren't going to let them out of there. I mean, because they are the State Department and the Justice Department are two disasters. And the Justice Department has gotten off to a better start of reforming itself. And I love what the CIA did. Wow. I mean, they sent the message, we don't want you around. But I mean, do you think of all the problems they've gotten us into in 20 to 30 years? You got to start new. But
let me add something.
I don't know. I just am worried. I know in my bones it's not true that the president and the people around him understand what I understand, that there's no talking to these people.
Right.
These dictators get to a point of no return.
Yes.
You can't negotiate with Hitler. You can't negotiate with Stalin. You can't negotiate with Xi Jinping. You might be able to negotiate with Putin. He's a little different. He's an animal and a killer and a murderer, but I'm not even sure he's a communist. I mean, he's a Russian super nationalist. But most of these people, you can't. And I also wonder how legitimate, like when the Israelis did that thing where they were able to explode all of the cell phones and the devices, and people had their device and they got blown up. Remember? The Ayatollah literally made the Revolutionary Guard around him get rid of, they went out and bought all new ones. They took everything they had and burned it. They started with all new ones, and he went on retreat for a couple of days. So he's afraid to die, which is inconsistent with the idea that he'd be a martyr. Somehow he wants you to be a martyr, but not him.
Right. Well, May, you mentioned something very important, that whole appeasement policy that was dominating here in this country, but also in Europe. Part and parcel of that policy was that when it came to the Iran regime, they always demanded their counterparts, whether it was Europe or the United States, to target the main organized opposition in Iran, namely the MEK and the NCRI. In 1997, the regime asked, they said, we have a moderate president. The regime asked the State Department here during the Clinton administration to designate the main organized opposition, the MEK, as on a terrorist list, FTO list. And it took 15 years
I know.
for them and the parliament in exile to fight that designation, and eventually win, to show the world, going through courts and Congress and all of that, that the real terrorists are the ruthless rulers of Iran, and these are freedom fighters.
Yeah, this was a perfect application.
Yeah, exactly. And now, as we speak, the regime's officials say openly that in every meeting they have with their foreign counterparts, the number one demand in their meetings, at least they said a third of our meeting is spent on asking those foreign counterparts to target us, our movement, to limit our activities, to not recognizing us, not giving us, allowing us to have forums and activities, and but also demonizing. There's a huge amount of propaganda, all of them originated from Tehran, describing our movement as terrorists because they themselves
are terrorists, you're communists,
Islamic Marxists, that they are cult, that they have no support in Iran, and all of these things are meant.
I have to tell you, I've been with them since 2009, right?
Yes,
2009, and I've been with you in all different parts of the world, and even live in your compound for a short while. These people are extraordinary. They are extraordinary. We'll show them over the next couple of weeks. We'll show them some of the home movies we have. These are extraordinary people. They are complete patriots, and they believe what you believe. Well, most of you believe, not all of us anymore, unfortunately. They believe in the fundamental values of human rights and decency, and it's amazing. And they have a government in exile. By that I mean they have people that are ready on an interim basis to make sure the country functions. So you don't have an Iraq situation where we took over Iraq, but we hadn't thought out, well, how the heck are we going to run this place? And I thought we made a critical mistake. And I was actually absolutely confident that we would know how to run Iraq, because maybe I was thinking too far back. I was thinking of how good we were at running Japan and Italy. I mean, we're a country that used to be able to teach other countries. How do you do that? I mean, we turned Japan into one of our best friends. We turned Italy into one of our best friends, and we were at war with them, and Germany. But we went into Iraq, and first of all, we got rid of everybody on the theory that everybody must have supported Saddam Hussein. Well, same thing there, I'm sure. A lot of people didn't support Saddam. They had to work for him, but they didn't support him. So you have to use those people until you find out you're making a mistake, and then you get rid of them. But the country, you got to deliver the mail, and you got to deliver the milk, and you got to keep the country going. The point here is that you got that worked out already.
Absolutely, Mayor. In the case of the Iran, the 10-point plan.
That's
of
why they're
Mrs.
worried about you
Rajavi,
so much.
right?
The reason they're
Because we
worried,
know
if you want to figure out who's telling the truth here, try to get yourself some of the things the Ayatollah has said about them. The Ayatollah has actually said that the only group realistically that can replace us is MEK. The Ayatollah has said that. And then the State Department will tell you they're a weak group. But the Ayatollah will say that's the only one that, and he warns his people and basically says, if you want to kill them, just kill them, because they're the only ones who can really, and I think what he means by that is you have a broad cross-section of support all over the country, and you've thought out the process of how you'd replace them.
Exactly. And the Mrs. Rajavi has said very clearly that our goal is not just to take over power or even share power. Our goal is to transfer power to the true elected representatives of the people of Iran. And the process is that after the fall of the Ayatollah, it's been stated over 2 decades ago, that there is a roadmap for change, for process of change, that first, after the overthrow of the regime, within 6 months, there will be free and fair elections that would lead to the formation of a national and constituent assembly that would then take over the affairs of the country, appoint an interim government, and within 2 years, you will have a new constitution that is approved by the elected representatives of the people of Iran. And there's going to be a peaceful process of transition, which is the role of Mrs. Rajavi to oversee that transition period. In the meantime, the idea is the platform that we will operate on is that 10-point platform, as you said, and many members of Congress have described it as a Jeffersonian platform for people to understand here. That platform, the 10-point plan, has the support of a House majority here in the United States over the years.
And by majority, you mean Democrats and Republicans.
And Democrats,
you don't mean
exactly.
the technical majority.
No.
Now,
Democrats are almost half and half.
Yeah,
and then the same situation in the Senate that had the support of about a third of the Senate, half and half. So that shows that the issue is not really a partisan issue. It's about the future of a nation that impacts the future of the whole world.
Right.
Think about the kind of Iran that we're fighting for, a free, democratic, non-belligerent, non-nuclear republic Iran that respects the vote of the population, that respects and lives in coexistence with its neighbors. What an impact it would have around the world. And that's why the Ayatollahs don't want it. That's why they have been vehemently opposed to us. That's why this is the number one demand from anyone who wants to negotiate with them, that they want something to, either us being targeted, being designated, our activities being limited. All of that, the demand comes from Tehran. And that's why when you change that policy, it all boils down to policy.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of policy the U.S. is pursuing regarding Iran? Are they going to continue the appeasement, the general appeasement policy, just give something to the Ayatollahs to make them happy? Or they're going to adopt a totally different approach that would empower the people of Iran to bring about change in the country? That's where you want to invest. And that's what members of Congress are saying. And I hope that's what the new reality that both in Washington and Europe, they will recognize it.
Well, I do believe it is. And I think it has to play itself out a little, but I do believe it is. And I do know that there are any number of people that are in positions of power now that see it as clearly as I do. So I'm very, very hopeful. But we also have an enemy that's unpredictable and willing to do anything. So we have to be ready for surprises and be able to react to them. But this has been very, very helpful, Ali Reza. As usual, a much better explanation than anybody else could give, and one that's very helpful. The American people are not educated enough on this because it's part of the censorship that goes on.
Right, absolutely. It's part of the propaganda by the Iran regime, but part of the policy. And but I want to commend you, Mayor, for over the years you have been totally very unwavering, sticking with the facts. It didn't matter what propaganda was. It didn't matter what political expediency existed. With different administrations, you kept the focus on the facts on the ground.
So,
you recognized, detected the true patriots who believe in freedom, and you have seen the impact of a free Iran on the whole world, including the United States, but also in the region. And I want to commend you for that.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
sure that's
I've been
why
it's been a,
people of America
it-
really, commend you for the work you have done
it's
over
been
the years.
it's been a unbelievable experience, and I tell you, I'm so glad that I got involved. It's just an unbelievable experience, and it's one that I feel we're very, very close.
Appreciate that.
Very close to achieving freedom for these wonderful people.
And when Iran is free, Mayor,
Yep.
you should come and see the beautiful country of Iran. First of all, you're going to be welcomed by the
No, for
people of Iran.
The food.
And obviously the food, a beautiful country, and great hospitality, and tremendous culture and history.
And a lot of our history there pre Christ. I mean, you go back to before BC, 1,000 years, 1,200 years, 1,300 years. Iran, that area of the world, is the beginning of our civilization.
Absolutely. Cyrus the Great had the human rights, foundation, basically, based on that. And, that's where we come from. And these mullahs and the dictatorships we have seen in the past, 100 years or so. And, the mullahs were absolutely a disaster. Before that, we had the dictatorship of the Shah, that under the cover of different covers, he had a very repressive. He had the single party rule. People forget that he dissolved all political parties who were allegiant to him anyways, and he created his own party, saying everybody has to become a member of my party, or else you end up in jail. And he was so arrogant, and he had Savak, which they said, oh, we're putting all the intellectuals in jail. But ironically,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there are some people that they'll say, well, Carter shouldn't have allowed the Shah to be overthrown, or maybe they're not ready for democracy, and maybe it's a good idea if they bring the Shah's son back. Now, I'm not going to have you answer that, because I know the answer to it, because I know some of these people. I represented them way back. The Shah that got deposed was a deteriorated gene pool from the original Shah. He was an indecisive, sick man, physically sick, a weak man, and a man that had to be taken out of there twice because he was in great fear.
Yes.
I am told, although I've never met him, I've listened to him, the new Shah is a deteriorated gene pool from the guy who couldn't make a decision. And it's about money. And it also, there are a lot of signs that he's cooperating with the regime, which you don't even need, even if that's possibly true. And have you ever heard of a country going from monarchy to dictatorship, monarchy, which is a dictatorship, to a dictatorship, which is a religious theocracy, and then to a monarchy, which will be part of a theocracy, because he'll work things out with them.
Actually, that's an important point you made.
He'll work things out with them. The Shah tried to work things out with them.
Actually, the Shah was in full cahoots
not that he
with
believed,
the clergy.
Not that he believed, but he
actually promoted the clergy.
Yeah, he didn't believe it. He just did it. He did it to control.
Actually, at that time, the way he sold it to the United States and others is that the clergy are against communism.
Right.
And therefore it's good for them to have, and they were praising the Shah every time they got in mosques.
They didn't point out that the clergy were also in favor of Hitler.
Actually, they did. And the Shah himself, his father, was a big ally of Hitler. So, exactly as you said, we have a history, actually our nation have a history of over 100, at least the past century, you look at it, there have been, major efforts and uprisings and for freedom and democracy.
But,
we had a nationalistic government of Dr. Mossadegh who nationalized oil, and every time the monarchy of the Pahlavi dynasty took power, they took power through coup d'etat, and the people overthrew them. They put them back again.
I think the Pahlavis, however dumb he was, the people around him understood how to use the fear of communism and to play that.
Exactly.
I mean, they'd have done business with the communists if that made sense for them.
Actually, and that's what led to stealing the leadership of a genuine revolution in 1979, when people were fed up with the Shah. They wanted to have democracy, but because the Shah had either executed or put the intellectuals in jail and left the network of the clerics totally intact. When the time came, they just came out of nowhere and stole the leadership of a genuine revolution. You know, Khomeini, only 4 months before the revolution, he was in Iraq. And he was nowhere to be found. He had no statements, nothing against the Ayatollahs. And suddenly he saw the opportunity. He smelled it. He went from there, eventually landed near Paris, Neufchâteau. Within 4 months, he stole the leadership of a revolution,
and
which
the big
he played
mistake
no
was to
role
let
in
him
it.
come back. The big mistake was to let him come back, because he convinced everybody he was just going to be a peaceful.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And then the minute but he had organized surreptitiously.
But they had a network. They had thanks to the Shah that kept that whole network in place. But of course, as you said, of course, there are a lot of people who are nostalgic about the past. Like, you still in France, for instance, there's still some princes in different villages here and there that are saying that they're waiting for the return of Louis XVI back to monarchy in France. I mean, they can have those things in mind. But
when Trump got involved in this thing with Greenland, and the King of Denmark got involved, I didn't even know Denmark had it. What the hell is Denmark doing with a king? The King of Denmark? I thought that was like one of those Hallmark movies. I'm going to marry the prince. I didn't think they really had such things. I am not. This is very difficult because they might take it away from me. I am knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, but I'm the furthest person from a monarchist you ever met. I think it's the silliest damn thing. It's like a part of history. A king.
Well, in the case of Iran, monarchy has always been associated with fascism and repression.
Yeah,
that's the history.
Very
Iran.
few places
will never come back.
Very few places is it connected with anything good. Maybe England. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to thank our friend Ali Reza, who I can assure you is constantly keeping us up to date on what's going on there. Because I expect at some point, and I'm going to say it, within the next 6 months, something very serious is going to happen there. They just can't go on for too long. The pressure is tremendous. I know Trump is very impatient. So, he'll put up with this for a little while, but there's going to come a point where he's going to want this thing resolved. And he is completely committed to peace in the Middle East. And I do think he knows you're not getting there unless you get rid of not just the Ayatollah, but that whole structure. I like to call it the reign of terror, but that whole structure he's put in place, the mullahs and
absolutely, Mayor, rest assured that people of Iran are totally fed up.
I can see that.
The Ayatollahs, they're striving for change for 4 decades. That paid a huge price over the years. Now is the time to see all of that leading to a free, democratic, non-nuclear republic.
It might be worth it sometime in the next couple of weeks if we do a little show and show them some of the demonstrations back in 2018, 19. Show them how.
Yes.
I think they're going to be shocked to see people in Iran holding up signs blaming it on the Ayatollah when they could be shot right on the spot holding it.
Right.
That shows the people that are pretty far along to revolution.
Very determined for change.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate that.
We'll be back very shortly after we try to make some money. After all, we're not communists.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
The Tunnel to Towers Foundation delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your
This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live. Wasn't that a fascinating discussion with our friend Ali Reza? And I tell you, it's like you feel it and you just wish you could push the 1 or 2 more things that have to be done and get them done quickly. I also, you always think of things that you want to ask after it's over, but he's still here, so I'll get to ask him after the show. Just how close is it? I don't think you ever know that. You know, having watched other revolutions, including the one in Ukraine, the first one against communism, it was supposed to happen for about 7 or 8 months. And then all of a sudden, when you least expect it, boom, the people just rise up and they've just had enough. And the leadership has had enough. I mean, these people are not the big heroes who think they are. As soon as the Israelis blew up all those devices, these guys went and hid in closets. So these are not Navy SEALs, believe me. These are crooks generally aren't, and madmen generally aren't. So I don't understand. I don't understand what the hell the Democrats are doing now. They got beaten in the last election. It is clear they were beaten on policy. They did everything they could to demonize Trump. We've never had anyone run for office with 4 criminal indictments against him. They made sure this complete scoundrel of a prosecutor and judge in New York got him convicted. I don't know, and who knows? Well, somebody tried to kill him twice. So we won't say it was them, but somebody tried to kill him. So they tried everything they could to take him out, aside from that killer being successful, and he got elected. So now we're going right back to where we were 4 years ago, right? Yesterday, they have these demonstrations with Schumer the traitor. Schumer is a traitor to his own people. It's probably the most disgusting thing you can be, maybe your own family, but his own people. He turned his back on Israel and put the knife in to Bibi's back, literally interfered in the Israeli election and told him to vote against Bibi. Without Netanyahu, we're nowhere. I mean, Biden was sucking up to Iran like they were his allies. There's no question he's given Iran a lot more money than Israel. A lot of people complain about America gives so much money to Israel. How much money have we given to Israel? About 20 million. How much have we given to Ukraine? We have 20 billion. We've given 200 billion to Ukraine, and we've let at least 100 billion go to Iran. And this guy sits back there, and he's a member of the party and supports all of it. And then when the AOC crew comes along and utters all kinds of vile anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic statements, he goes and hides in a basement somewhere with the rats. And then every once in a while he shows up, and I gotta believe every time you see him, you say to yourself, how the hell did he ever get to the Senate? Shall we play the disgusting demonstration they had yesterday? And I'll tell you why this really ticks me off. This goes much further than anybody on January 6th went in calling for violence. And Donald Trump did not say, fight, 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 we're going to war. Donald Trump said, go to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically. I was there on January 6th. I was one of the speakers. I have a court opinion that everything I said was peaceful from an Obama judge that threw out the case that those scoundrels brought against me. I never said anything like this. I don't know any Trump people that ever said anything like this. And they do it all the time. I mean, they almost got Kavanaugh killed, didn't they? I mean, Schumer almost got Kavanaugh killed. Right after he made his inflammatory remarks, the guy showed up wanting to bomb Kavanaugh's house. And I will go to my grave believing that the two people that went after Trump were at least motivated by all of the vicious language from a creep like this. So, and I know him personally, and his wife worked for me. That's this creep you're going to see now, Schumer, traitor to his people. I really have, since I know him personally, I can tell you all, when I look at him, I just see a man who's not really a man. When you turn on your own people, you're worth nothing.
One of the 47 Democratic senators is going to vote against that horrible, dangerous man, Russell Vogt, on Wednesday. And we cannot allow Elon Musk and a small group of people to secretly, behind closed doors, take away our privacy, take away our dollars, take away everything we have. We are going to fight this fight. I am going to stand with you in this fight, and we will win.
And that was demonizing Musk, right? So think about this. This is a pattern and a process, and somebody should do an analysis of it, because I really do think this comes out of Marx and Orwell's satire on Marx and some of the writings in the 20th century about Marxism. So Donald Trump, before he ran for president, I knew him very, very well as a New Yorker and as a friend and as a political supporter. Contributed to my first campaign back in the, prehistoric days. And Donald Trump was one of the most popular people in New York. He was on the cover of every magazine. Everybody wanted him on television. He had the #1 show in the country, The Apprentice, for a while, right? And there was no major criticism of him. Maybe there'd be some, gossip column stuff. But he was basically a very well-liked guy, wanted by everyone. A lot of these Democrats who support him now were urging him to run for president way back 10 years before he did. All of a sudden, he announces for president. He doesn't just become wrong. He's a demon. He's a demon they've made him a demon to such a point that I think people almost, some of these people hate him so much it's an illness. They literally have gotten themselves into a frenzy. Remember after the first election, they had to put up these little places for quiet rooms so the kids could go there because they were traumatized. I mean, if your kid is traumatized by an American election of any kind, I'm sorry, a quiet room isn't going to help. The kid needs serious psychiatric help because he's pretty much a useless kid and somebody's got to put him together. When you start crying and can't recover from an election, it's a sign that you have a serious mental illness. And please tell me who it is. I don't want to hire him, nor do I want to be in a foxhole with them. Thank you. Okay? So they go through that craziness in 2016. They begin impeaching him before he even gets in office. Now they waited until he was sworn in, but did somebody introduce an impeachment thing today or yesterday? Yes. But do they know what they're impeaching him for?
No, they actually are seeking input.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe are they giving money?
I don't. I'm actually going to assume that there is some money involved.
Whoever can come up with the best reason to impeach Trump.
I bet if you put something together, they would pay for it.
They win a trip to Cuba or Venezuela or
China.
You win a trip to Beijing. You may not come back, but you win a trip to Beijing.
Iran.
With a special tour by Tampon Tim, who's been there 30 times and teaches there, but he's not a communist. They allow him to teach the American Constitution there. Ha, 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 ha. So I guess, shall we now listen to him on, we have him on Kavanaugh? Because that's the one that I thought was the cruelest and the meanest. I believe he's gotten a letter from the Justice Department on this. No, sorry. U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia has written him a letter and he wants, I don't know, I guess he wants documents.
Tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. And they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
Now, I believe I have this correct, Ted. Sometime after that,
awful decision, and they're taking away.
Should we put it off? So I believe that sometime after that, they caught a guy with instructions and explosives to kill Kavanaugh and blow him up and his family in his house, right? But then we don't hear much about that. That's right, very quietly. This guy has no history. This guy has no explanations. Nobody tries to probe how much is that connected to Schumer's exhortations to kill Kavanaugh. No one even writes, my God, he talked about that. And then this guy comes along. I don't get this. Meanwhile, they put 1,000 people in jail for an insurrection that never happened. I mean, that language is way beyond any language on January 6th. And then it led to something. It led to a guy who attempted to kill the guy he's focusing on, Kavanaugh. And he's still in the Senate. And yesterday he was with the group. He was with the group that wants to fight, and who acknowledged that they're at war against the administration. At war. They're at war against him. Can you imagine if Trump was at war against them? Or Bannon and I got up and said we're at war? They'd put us in jail for leading an insurrection. Isn't that what they tried to do? For doing nothing. The only time this country is going to get back to being what it was, a country of equal justice under the law, is when we have equal justice. When people aren't prosecuted for crimes they didn't commit, and people are prosecuted for crimes they do commit. And don't get fooled. That isn't vindictiveness. That isn't, I didn't prosecute the mafia out of vindictiveness. Prosecuted the mafia because they kill people. You don't prosecute these people out of vindictiveness. You prosecute these people because they committed crimes. And one of the legitimate purposes of the criminal law is deterrence. You put this big mouth schmuck in jail, and maybe you shut up other people from doing that. And we save a couple of lives. Now, let's see how they feel within the criminal justice system. And we're not gonna, and I will go nuts if we treat them the same way. If we arrest Schumer and we put leg irons on him, I'll be the first one to go crazy, even though they did it to my friend Peter Navarro. And because that should never happen. You use leg irons when you're arresting a out of control animal. You don't use leg irons for a white collar criminal. You don't even use it for a violent criminal unless the guy's out of control. I don't know, except maybe for the terrorists that we arrested. I don't know that we ever used leg irons. I mean, if we did, I wasn't aware of it. And I certainly wasn't aware of making a big deal out of it by putting it on television. Well, how about CBS? They finally, after the election is over, released what they did. And if you just take a look, at the two scripts, you can see that they basically took an entire, I guess, one of the worst word salads that anyone ever rendered, and took it down to one sentence. Now, this isn't like editing it to shorten it. This is editing it because one of the big questions about her is, did she have a functioning brain? If they played the whole thing, it would have been sure proof to the American people that once again, the Democrats were trying to give us a second person without a functioning brain, probably because they can control a person without a functioning brain. So CBS, proving that it's a functionary of the Democrat Party, went ahead and shockingly eliminated everything that would make it sound like she's stupid and idiotic, and didn't tell you, and made you think it was a live broadcast. Now, for that, they should lose their license, because they're not, and then, I don't know, do you want to go into the rest of it? 90% of their coverage was pro Kamala, and 89% of their coverage was anti-Trump. You want to go into the whole thing, or the way they conduct debates, or, I mean, they are clearly something as bad as, or almost as bad as, the news organizations under the communists and the.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu. Is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So let's take a look at that, Ted, too. You can see it as an edit. So that's what she said. That's 2 paragraphs of well, let's start with this. On this subject, the aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israeli and the people of Israel. And I think this is the most recent example of why what we did to assist in their defense around military aid. I don't know what that around military is important. And when we think about the threat of that Hezbollah presents Iran, Hamas and Hezbollah presents a threat to Iran? What the hell is she talking about? They work for Iran. I think that is, without any question, our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around, she sure as heck doesn't know how to use the word around, pursuit around making clear our principles. That's what we do with Israel. We work with Israel in an ongoing pursuit around making our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop in terms of putting that pressure on Israel and in the region, including with other leaders in the region, including Arab leaders. Now, you understand what that means, you're good. So then they changed it. All of that gets changed to, which at least makes her sound like she's somewhat compos mentis. What would you do about Israel? The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles. I mean, that actually is a pretty stupid answer, too.
Yeah, still not great.
So we work with Israel to make our principles clear. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think Kamala Harris is
in other words, we're educating Israel. This is an educational relationship. We make our principles clear to Israel.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that Kamala Harris was just like a very early version of ChatGPT that kind of spit out nonsense answers.
Why wouldn't they build inside of her like an automatic AI, and the AI could talk and we'd see her, and then the AI would give the answer? Maybe it wasn't AI. AIs, can be a little bit. Have you ever listened to something?
That's what I'm saying.
The AIs can sometimes be a little bit circuitous like this and get confused because they don't know where they're going.
It sounds kind of like it.
Yeah.
Or Veep. If you've ever seen Veep on HBO, I don't know if you've ever seen that show. Oh my gosh. Julie Louis-Dreyfus plays the vice president, and she's just known for being aloof. And all the speeches could be either one of them, Kamala or this Veep character.
Maybe she's imitating her.
Maybe. Or drunk.
That was another thing that was said about her, that she was drunk. I do remember that one scene with her and your governor that looked like they were trying to pick up guys in a bar, right? They were trying to get them. I mean, it's really hilarious. This was a thing to try to get the men's vote, and they're sitting there, and they look like they were pickups in a bar. Kind of disrespectful to decent men. And they were going to vote for somebody who's a bar pickup.
And to the offices itself. But we all know how Kamala got her first job, so... out in California. Whatever works, I
mean, it could be that her husband was outside the bar beating the shit out of his old girlfriend, but isn't that where he beat the shit out of her coming out of a bar? Well, President Trump's desire, do you know that President Trump has a desire to investigate his past legal adversaries? Have you ever heard him say that? Well, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article, C. Ryan Barber and Sadie Gurman C. Ryan and Sadie begin this article, which then proves something else, actually. President Trump's desire to investigate his past legal adversaries. He hasn't said that. What he said is that justice should be done. He also said that we should be very careful about how we do that. And by the way, he has a history of not prosecuting his past rivals when he could have, whereas they have a history of being the first ones in history to do it en masse. They didn't just prosecute him; they prosecuted about 200 of his people, including yours truly. So I really take offense at this, because this is what cheap journalism is all about, and it's unworthy of the Wall Street Journal. The article gives the impression that he set up a program now. Pam Bondi moves swiftly Wednesday to marshal the Justice Department toward President Trump's desire to investigate his past legal adversaries. He didn't have her do that, nor did she do that. She set up a group to look at the weaponization of law enforcement and to look at those people who worked on the January 6th committee, who acted illegally. And they did. They obstructed justice. Now, the prosecutors, I gave the prosecutors evidence of murder, and I gave them evidence of Antifa infiltration. Gave it to them 4 or 5 days after January 6th. And they covered up that evidence. And the guys who covered that up, or women, should go to jail. That's called obstruction of justice. You don't cover up evidence of a murder unless you are one miserable criminal. I don't think every prosecutor that worked on J6 should be prosecuted. I don't think every agent who worked on it. I don't think the agents who came to my house unnecessarily and illegally searched me or my law office should be prosecuted. I don't think they knew any better. Oh, people would say, well, they were like Nazi prison guards. Okay. Aren't you maybe expecting a little bit too much moral fiber? It's only the real heroes that will do that. And I don't think what they were asked to do in my case was so morally offensive. I do have a problem with the ones carrying the machine guns to arrest Roger Stone, however. I don't think I would have agreed to an order like that. I know I wouldn't. If you told me I had to carry a machine gun to go arrest, even if I thought he was guilty of lying to Congress or whatever, I'm not going to arrest a guy lying to Congress with a machine gun. I would think you're crazy to have me carrying a machine gun. And if I saw CNN there, I'd report my boss immediately. We have to expect this kind of moral fiber from the FBI if we want a good FBI. So I understand we should prosecute those who are clearly guilty of serious crimes. We shouldn't stretch it. At the same time, we shouldn't avoid our duty to do it. Otherwise, it's going to happen to us again. And we also have to understand we're being propagandized and we're being intimidated into not doing it because we're going to be criticized if we do. And this party of ours has had too much of that. The Republican Party has too many sissies and too many people that aren't strong enough to defend liberty. Because that's what's involved here. We're defending freedom and liberty by prosecuting the people who took it away from other people. The Democrats get back in power and they don't pay any price for this. It'll be worse next time because they're going to want to make up for the time they lost in making us a communist dictatorship. So Pam Bondi definitely has a very, very difficult line to walk here. She should not be afraid to prosecute these people who acted criminally and who destroyed our Constitution and gave us the worst 4 years in terms of human rights in this country's history, or certainly in terms of legal rights and judicial rights. They should be penalized for what they did. They should be punished, and they should be made an example of so it doesn't happen again. On the other hand, if you're going to take stretching it out to every person who did an arrest. And I might have moral problems with them. I'd probably rather see them out of the FBI. I don't think they have the moral fiber to be FBI agents, but I don't think they should be prosecuted. And she's going to have to show that kind of discipline. But already they're trying to lie about it. President Trump has not asked anyone to investigate his legal adversaries. He's asked them to investigate people who committed serious crimes so those crimes aren't repeated. It's very simple. It's clear. The message isn't even ambiguous. Their message is dishonest. But the Wall Street Journal, unfortunately, has too often resorted to that kind of low level of journalism because of their, in the case of some of their reporters, their insane hatred of Trump. And there's nothing in that report that supports it. All that report talks about are people who took the criminal justice system and distorted it into being a weapon. That's criminal. That's obstruction of justice. We've also cut off funds for, the president ordered this, so it's going to happen in a lot of quarters, but the Justice Department cut off the funds that they supply to sanctuary cities. So and that isn't as much money as others, but it's $8 billion. About time. I mean, the law says that you should cooperate. And now you have a person who's violated the law and you're hiding them from federal law enforcement. Number one, that's a crime. And number two, we're giving you money to do it. And same thing with the Catholic charities and the other charities who are hiding these people. I don't know what they're thinking, and I don't understand how they think they're helping people, particularly with this group of migrants that were disproportionately criminal. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't be disproportionately criminal because there were no restraints on them. Prior group of migrants, legal and illegal, even the ones that came in illegally, took a risk they'd be caught. This group were told by Biden that they wouldn't be caught at all. The people from China that have come in here, we either don't know who they are, and that's probably half of them, and the others, we only able to ask them 4 questions, so we don't know who they are. A lot of the people that came in were given very, very quick vetting because the numbers were so great. And as many have admitted, there was no vetting at all at times just to move them through. In a lot of these countries, the vetting would be useless anyway. Venezuela will not cooperate with us and give us criminal records. So the biggest murderer in the history of Venezuela can walk in and you say to him, you have a criminal record? What do you think he's going to tell you? I murdered 45 people in Venezuela. He can tell you no, and there's no way to find out. And then like the guy who 4 months later raped and killed Laken Riley, he'll go rape and kill Laken Riley. And the Catholic Church is helping that. Boy, that's a misapplication of liberation theology, huh? Unfortunately, this Pope is also a victim of that. But the funds have been cut off by the Justice Department. I expect they all are. And then when the welfare money gets cut off, you'll see them get out of here like a bunch of rats get off a ship. There already a lot of them are moving out of New York, you know. Like the Roosevelt Hotel. Unfortunately, we're not in New York now. Otherwise, tonight we would go take a look down there and we'd get Ted to take some pictures. But the Roosevelt Hotel has some free rooms now if you want to go. I don't recommend staying there. A lot of people have gotten knifed, beaten. I don't know if anybody's been killed at the Roosevelt, but there are a lot of knifings, a couple of rapes. It used to be one of the finest hotels in New York. Now it's a crime red zone. I mean, I used to know, I have the red zones in New York City memorized in my mind. If you were to tell me that part of Midtown Manhattan to be a crime red zone, I'd say to yourself, boy, somebody had to work at that. Well, they did. They're called Democrats. So here's another thing that they're all upset about, all the civil rights lawyers and the lawyers who like criminals to walk around the streets. And you're going to say, well, this is, Trump has designated the cartels as terrorist groups. You know what that means? We don't have to try them. We can just throw them out. We just pick them up and throw them out. The same thing by using portions of the Alien Sedition Law. If we designate them as terrorists, we just pick them up. And my solution to this en masse is to put them in a big plane, one of those planes where we, transport tanks. I don't know how many you could get on a plane like that. You probably can get 1,000 or so. We have a lot of excess parachutes. I think it is important that we make sure the parachute works first. And these are they're smart enough to be and sneaky enough to come into the country. All they have to do is pull it. So if they don't want to take them, like in Venezuela, we pick an empty field in Venezuela. We take one of the big transports. We surround it by a couple of fighters so that the vaunted Venezuelan Air Force doesn't defeat us. And then we just drop them off. It'd be nice. A lot of people like to do skydiving. You introduce all these animals to a new sport. Let them. What do you mean they're not going to take them back? That's not an acceptable answer. So far, Trump has not had to resort to that. All he does is tell them, take them back, and they say, yes, sir. Even Maduro's going to take them back. And the guy in El Salvador has offered to take extra. And he must know what Trump is like. He also said, I'll give you a bargain rate because you're used to paying much higher prices. For me, I can charge you a lot less because the cost of living in El Salvador is a lot less. That must have been an interesting conversation between him and Rubio, where the guy, he built the premier prison in Latin America for cartel people and drug dealers. And then, of course, it's also attacked by the silly, wimpy liberals as being a terrible prison and all this other stuff. So he has like thousands and thousands of extra rooms. And he's willing to give them to us for anybody we want to send there, even our own criminals. Now, I don't think we can do that. Our own criminals cannot be sent outside the jurisdiction of the United States. But these guys are illegal aliens. We can send them. And when they find out they're going to this, they're not coming to New York where they can steal, rob, get free welfare, get a credit card, go around and rape any woman they want. When they find out they're going to go in one of what is regarded, I don't know if it's true, as one of the worst prisons in the hemisphere, I don't know. I think they'll stop coming. I think they will stop coming. And the president of Mexico is very, very upset that the cartels have been designated as terrorist groups. Now, I thought she was against the cartels. She's afraid that it will involve restrictions on legitimate, or I shouldn't say legitimate, on other businesses in Mexico. Well, like exactly what businesses? The banks that launder the money for them. Unless you don't want to get rid of those, Madam Scheinbaum, unless you don't want to get rid of those cartels and terrorists, you got to get rid of those banks. That's how you get rid of drug dealers. And why don't you really come clean, huh? Who really controls Mexico? You or the cartels? I don't think it looks good that you don't want the cartels designated a terrorist group when they are. I don't know. But she says she's willing to do all kinds of other things if we don't designate them. She's put troops there. She's going to allow us to remain in Mexico. So I guess I would leave it up to Trump to figure out which way we get more out of it. But it sure does support what Tom Homan and a lot of other people would tell us about the border, and that is that the Mexican government is tied in 100% with the cartels. The cartels run the government, not the other way around. I can't imagine having the gall to complain about murderous, homicidal, fentanyl-dealing cartels who kill a lot of your own people being designated as a terrorist group without admitting that there's some involvement of your government with them. I don't know if the terrorist or designation, but we'll find out, goes so far as our being able to use the military. But I will tell you, it's not necessary. And I am a person who thinks there should be very, very serious restraint on the use of our military for law enforcement, any kind of law enforcement purpose. I think that 250-year distinction in our country is one of the things that's maintained us as a free country. We have a distinction between how you use the military and how you use law enforcement. Any number of times I was tested on that, and I passed the test, even to the extent of Bob Woodward saying that I was a hero. Of course, they said I was a hero for some nefarious reason, but you got to be really careful about how you use the military. I'll give you another reason why I was always against it. The military isn't trained to do law enforcement. Law enforcement and fighting a war are two different things. So you think of the complexities of particularly urban policing. You don't want to take some poor National Guard kid and put him there, and he hasn't been trained in how you discipline yourself, what you do when you make an arrest, how you should respond. All of a sudden, you're going to put him in the kind of situation like with all these maniac prosecutors we have around. We'll put him like in a Daniel Penny situation, right? He'll probably do instinctually the right thing, but they'll make it into he was brutalizing people. Cops obviously shouldn't have to go through that either, but at least they're trained for that. And in many cases, they know how to avoid it, and they know how to help each other to avoid it. The poor kids in the military don't. So unless you're really talking about a situation where you just don't have the police, and here we have the police, and I thought one of the best things that happened for Tom Homan is the sheriffs all throughout Texas and other places are very, very anxious to help him. And they have tremendous resources, and their people will be better for this than the military. They will know how to do this better than a bunch of kids who aren't trained to do this. The military is trained to kill. It's not trained to police. There's been a report put out, a bombshell report, they say. I love that, bombshell reports, by Media Research Center, which says that Wikipedia is unfair. You don't need a report. You just got to look at it. Wikipedia is almost 100% left wing, and they move things around, take things out, change things, and they don't use right wing sources. They use they will not take quotations from the Daily Caller, the Federalist, Washington Free Beacon, Fox News, even the Post. However, of course, they fully supported the boycott of the Biden hard drive because they're dishonest, left wing. Oh, what would you call them? Non-Americans. And we know that from looking at Wikipedia. You read Wikipedia, I don't even read it anymore. I mean, it's like they even go back into history and give it a left-wing, slant. Give it a left-wing slant to it. So I was telling you before that this process of the Democrats to treat someone as a hero, then demonize. This is. I mean, they're doing it to us now, right? So I mean, just a few years, less than a few years ago, year and a half ago, Musk was, a great genius. He was saving us because we were losing our edge about going to space, right? He was coming up with what the Greenies loved, the electric vehicle. Oh, Greenies love electric vehicles because they like to stop every 20 minutes and recharge their car because they have a lot of time to waste because most of them don't work. But those of us who have to get to someplace quickly, we just can't charge our car for 1 hour every 15 minutes. And we're very afraid that you're going to want to use them in tanks and we're going to be fighting a war and all our tanks are going to stop because we don't have electricity. Or the airplanes are going to fall down from the air because we didn't charge it enough. But they loved Musk. Now Musk is a demon. Now he's a demon. I don't know if Trump feels any comfort in this, but some of them think that he's worse than Trump. I don't know what he did. Well, I know what he did. But I have a feeling he doesn't care. And I think the more they do it, I think it's going to be like a Justice Thomas situation. I saw him the other day. I wanted to kiss the television. He swore in Pam Bondi. The more they attack him, the more conservative he became. The more they attack Elon, the more he's going to go after them. And he's got more money than they do. And he's a hell of a lot smarter. What do you think of the $8.4 million in taxpayer funds that were obligated to Politico every year to buy? They were subsidizing subscriptions to Politico.
USAID gave $20 million to this OCCRP.
Well, we know that, but I'm talking about the 8.4 million.
Yeah, that's obviously that's also
to
just
Politico.
Right. Yes, that's terrible.
I think it's a nice way to get Politico to write good stuff about you.
Well, what the Post says is Politico was the first to cover up the hard drive, and that if Politico hadn't done it, the others might not have. So they probably paid for it. I mean, Politico is not that big an operation, particularly back then. 8.4 million has got to be a big chunk of change for them. Of course, yeah. It's obviously and would you say Politico is a left-wing rag? Yes. Good. I just wanted to make sure there was no hesitation there. So we're gonna sign off for tonight. We're gonna be back tomorrow night, and we're going to do a little preparation for the Super Bowl tomorrow night because I'm working. I am demanding that if she goes to the game, Taylor Swift has to play. Otherwise, nobody covers her. It's ridiculous that she gets all this attention in a game and she doesn't have to get in there and play. So I think it is going to be required that Mahomes has to throw at least 3 or 4 passes to her, and her boyfriend can't catch him. She has to catch him. So stop this Taylor Swift garbage. And she's going to have President Trump there, who she maligned and was nasty about. And I'm telling you, he likes opera. He doesn't like your kind of singing, Taylor. He likes Frank Sinatra and he likes country music, but he doesn't like people who always write about boyfriends who leave them. He also has a seeking suspicion that somebody who always has to write about boyfriends who leave them when they're as good looking as you are, there must be something wrong. Why do these boyfriends always leave you? Right? I mean, you're willing to put your legs out, everything. I mean, that other picture of you there was pretty close to like, you're obviously willing to, and the boyfriends leave you anyway. Why don't you stick to that stupid singing you do, which is, it's not, please, I don't want to be too judgmental, but if you could do it a little lower, it'd be nice. Every once in a while, there's a little screeching going on because you really don't have that good a voice, but there's a lot of public relations that goes into it. I thought yesterday the press conference with the young girls all going around Trump and his saving them from men being in sports, and he looked just like a perfect grandfather, as opposed to when that would happen with Biden. You know what he looked like. So we got a big change going on. We have to be very thankful for it. And until tomorrow night, we're going to say our prayer for the people of Iran so they're free, because they're on their way to freedom. I hope we demonstrated that tonight to you. And we're going to pray for the people of Israel and the people of Ukraine who are at war. And we're going to pray for the people of the United States because they were so damn smart to elect Trump. And we're going to say, God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply